do people sincerely want to fit in, right?
It is Thursday here in the United States, and I am excited about Transformer Talks today. Hi, everybody. John Kaplan here from the Alibaba team with our weekly Transformer Talk. And today is awesome because we've got a friend, an entrepreneur, a business builder, a supporter of the world's small businesses here, Nathan Jones. Nathan, it is great to see you. How is Austin, Texas today? Welcome.
Austin is fantastic. As you know, it's the middle of Texas, so it gets really hot, and it's not hot anymore. So we have the equivalent of most of the rest of the world's version of a summer is what's happening for us right now. But it feels great to us. So we're in shorts and T-shirts and loving it, and things are starting to loosen up also. So we're starting to get a little bit of sense of humanity back in the city. So that's really nice too.
Austin is, for those of you around the globe who don't know Austin, Texas is one of the coolest places in the U.S. Great food, amazing music, cool people. So Nathan, first, before we dig in, can you give us sort of the 90 seconds, who are you and what is ShipStation?
So, I'm Nathan Jones. I'm the CEO of Octane, and Octane is the company that carries the group of products, ShipStation, Shipping Easy, ShipWorks, and ShipEngine. And these are all shipping and logistics focused products that we make. I've been the CEO of this company. I was the first CEO that they hired. I've been doing it for about almost 8 years now. And before that, I ran a small business, and I built a business from the guest room of my house, built it, eventually moved it into my first offices, moved multiple offices, built it to about 150 person company. We had over 100 million in revenue. We sold it to another company in the industry as a competitor. I stayed on and worked with them in a leadership role there. Then we sold that to a publicly traded company and exited that industry. But we built all of our own systems at a time. We started it in 98, sold it in 2008. So we built all of our own systems at a time when you didn't have Alibaba to sell on. You didn't have a Shopify, a BigCommerce, or Magento to sell on your own branded sites, and you had to build all of your own infrastructure yourself. So I went through that journey as an individual entrepreneurial merchant, and then discovered all the pain associated with trying to solve the problems when you have an idea and you want to take it to market. And that was a really transformative experience for me because we grew fairly rapidly and learned a lot during that time period. But we also learned how hard it is to be a seller and how difficult it is to sell against very large companies or try and form partnerships and deal with the infrastructure of distribution. It's very, very difficult. And so a couple of years after I'd sold that company, I thought I had retired. Turns out that's hard to do. It's very, it's difficult to stop working. So I had gotten introduced to the founders of, at the time, ShipStation. And ShipStation's founders, Jason Hodges and Byron Weir, two really brilliant technical co-founders who built an amazing product to help people who sell in multiple marketplaces aggregate orders into one place and easily connect with shippers and manage their fulfillment. And that was an incredible lucky coincidence to run across them because they were trying to bring to market what we had to build for ourselves. And so I had a very close personal connection with the marketplace that they were selling to, but also had built similar types of software for our own consumption. And so them taking it into a multi-tenant place was really kind of an ideal next step to work on. And then, I'm a bit of a zealot on behalf of small merchants because I grew up as a small merchant, and it is possible to do it, but it's very hard. And the struggles that you go through when you're small are different than the ones as you get bigger. I went through all of them. And so joining this, it was a mission-centric group in the first place, but joining them was perfect because we were completely aligned in our feelings about merchants and what we were trying to accomplish. And so we were able to then take on, as a mission-centric business, build out ShipStation, which then later came to include the Octane Group, which came to include the other products that we've talked about. and we've kept on that mission the entire time. And it's been a really interesting ride. I've learned a lot in this, stage of my life that I did not learn at the last company that I ran. This company is a different kind of business, but it's to the same industry. So the best thing I can tell you in terms of my relationship to your audience is that I grew up as a merchant doing what they're doing, selling on the internet, trying to figure it out all the time. And I've devoted the last 7.5 years of my life to trying to make tools so that people who are doing what I used to try and do by myself can have help in doing it and be competitive against larger companies with deeper pockets and bigger infrastructures. So trying to level the playing field.
I love that, democratizing opportunity for small businesses globally, making it easy to do business anywhere. That is Alibaba's mission. And I love when I meet a fellow traveler who's a software builder who bleeds small business and bleeds entrepreneurship. It's it's amazing. So we have folks here from all over the globe. I see folks from Pakistan, South Africa, Cameroon joining us. It is a thrill each week to bring the Transformer Talks audience together, because it's the world's entrepreneurs coming together to talk about, learn from each other, share experiences. So tell me, before we dig into some details, some of the stats. How many businesses do you guys serve? How many packages do you help ship? Give us the framework of where you are today.
Yeah, a loose sense of scale here that'll help is, we are owned now. We can talk about this in a minute, but we're owned by Stamps.com, and we generally roll our numbers in with their numbers. But I can tell you we're a strong contributor to those numbers as well. The Stamps.com, including our group, has many hundreds of thousands of e-commerce sellers, merchants using their products. We are a very, very strong contributor to those numbers as well. We have hundreds and hundreds of millions of orders that flow through our system, billions and billions of dollars of GMV. That's billions with a B. Like, it's a huge amount of commerce that flows through our systems. We're very quiet about it. So we don't go out and scream a lot about, look how many businesses we touch, or look how much commerce is flowing through. But if we were to scream about it, right, I think people would be surprised by how much we are involved with and how much we touch. It is, COVID has been an interesting time, because in our industry, COVID has sent a lot of people online, and we've seen very strong e-commerce growth as a whole, but we've even outgrown the growth of e-commerce during this time period, because our products are just positioned to be very helpful in this time. We have, I can tell you that the Octane Group, working towards its products, has over 500 employees. A very big portion of those are developers who are working hard every day to build out features in the products. And we've expanded internationally. Now we're in 5 countries, and we probably will pick up as many as 5 more in 2021. So we're rapidly trying to take what we've done here to help merchants and, expanding it to help merchants in other countries, but also who are selling across borders, which is, a great opportunity for growth for everyone.
Yeah, it is amazing to see the power of cross-border trade for e-commerce merchant, and what it can mean to serve the world from wherever it is your headquarters are. Right, doing e-commerce globally is a special opportunity for the entrepreneur of this decade that 20 years ago wasn't available to them, and we certainly see our most successful sellers on the Alibaba.com platform and buyers on the Alibaba.com platform benefiting from going global. Get digital and go global. Tell me a little bit about we're 7 months into COVID in the U.S. What is the change you've seen in your customers, right? What are they doing differently today that a year ago they maybe were not doing? What's the transformation happening to small business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the key things that we've seen is, everyone always has these plans about what they're going to do next year, right? And so you sit in your lane and you do your work where you live, because that's easy. That's the most proximate problem you have. And then you get it excited about what next year you're going to do or the year after. We plan to move internationally, or we plan to take our local retail business online, or we plan to. And what we've seen is COVID be an accelerant for those plans for most of our sellers, or many of our sellers. They don't, when some core markets become very difficult to sell in because people can't walk into your store anymore, or maybe your region has some elements that are still shut down, you suddenly have to look at all the other markets, and you can't sit back and wait. You have to hustle and hurry and get into them. So we've seen a lot of retail businesses that always knew they needed to go online, but I'm talking about local walk-in retail. We've seen a lot of them go online. We've seen a lot of people who used to think they could just sell their products to a certain narrow segment realize they can or have to open their products up to a much wider segment. Yeah. That in many cases means entering new marketplaces, in a lot of cases, new markets. And so I know there's a lot of talk, and I don't 100% agree with this. I'm no expert on the future of global commerce. But I've seen a lot of experts weigh in and say, well, does COVID mean the end of the global economy, the global connectedness? I don't believe that it does. I think we may actually see the opposite. There may be strains in relationships and other sorts of things at various times. And when things get really tough briefly in a pandemic moment, countries may close in a little bit. But in the end, I think what we saw is how irrevocably interconnected all of our economies are. And I don't think that's going to get any less in the future. I think it's going to get more. And I think that we have seen a lot of our customers accelerate their plans and their actions on selling internationally in a way that they were not doing before. We're seeing a dramatic uptick in the ask around features and helping us find them fulfillment partners outside of the U.S. borders or inside the U.S. for people moving into the U.S. territory. And our international products have seen very strong growth during this period as well. So we know this is a global change.
Yeah, no, I was talking to someone who sells on the Alibaba.com platform, an entrepreneur, Florida-based, doing a couple of $1 million exporting on the Alibaba.com platform in the consumer product space. Another person, a manufacturer local in the New York area, he has a brand of kimchi, selling it globally, recognizing that 10 employees, 20 employees, 40 employees, actually the ability to use Alibaba.com to do cross-border B2B trade, right? To get order, instead of getting a $20 order, get a $2,000 order or a $200,000 order can be super meaningful. When you look at the ShipStation customer base and the Octane customer base, how would you say the folks are beginning to think about who are maybe in the direct-to-consumer space, recognizing the need to actually enter the B2B space, right? The transformation of being both direct-to-consumer and trading with other businesses.
Yeah, I think that's one of the interesting ways people view entering other markets in some cases. Not everyone has expertise in how to market locally, right? Depending on, like, if let's say we're in the US and we want to market in Japan. Your products might be relevant in Japan, but you may not know how to market there. So one of the things you can do is you can sell to businesses there who your products might be very relevant, but they themselves know how to reach the actual consumer of the product. And we always struggle internally because we talk about customers, and we're like, wait, you mean the customer who's buying from our merchant or the merchant who's our customer? So We've adopted consumer as the way of talking to about the person who buys the actual product. But you can be successful where you can find your own customers, but there are many, many businesses that can share in reaching those customers with you, and your products can be very, very relevant to them. And we believe we're very long on initiatives and on effort in this space. We think there's a lot to be said for the evolution of merchants into being distributors and suppliers, as well as B2C sellers in the future.
One of the interesting stats that or numbers that I sort of remind myself of sort of every morning when I wake up is the global B2B e-commerce market is $23.9 trillion. It is the global B2B e-commerce market, $23.9 trillion. And I bet folks in the Transformer Talks audience don't realize that's actually 6 times larger than the B2C market. There's more dollars in the B2B space than in the B2C. And for those, enterprising entrepreneurs globally, going after that market is a heck of a good spot to fish. And so, we are excited about the momentum we're seeing there.
Yeah, we have seen we see the same numbers exactly the same way you do. It's always shocking because all the e-commerce reporting that you usually see in the news is almost always, in all the financial reporting, it's almost always talking about this major, internet seller's brand and how many hundreds of millions they have, and wow, it's practically a monopoly, or this is tens of millions, and it's so much of it. Then you back out from B2C and you realize how just enormously large B2B is and how much more is traded in that space. And you realize that we're just barely tapping into the market, and much of that is not satisfied online yet. There's really, it's a gold rush for the people who have found that. It's figuring out how to enter it properly and then go deep with it. And that's one of the things Alibaba brings a lot of. We're very excited about that side of the partnership because we think that is an underserved opportunity and an undervalued opportunity by most merchants.
And so a specific shipping question sort of about, when an SMB, when an entrepreneur is thinking about B2C shipments, they're, a sleeve, a small box, or what have you. When a merchant starts shipping containers or pallets, right? Because on Alibaba.com, merchants sell pallets and container loads of product. How do they have to think differently? What is that how does their mindset need to change, or their capability need to change as they migrate to both into B2B commerce?
Your economics obviously change quite a bit because your shipping costs are aggregated into one bulk shipment in many cases. And so your pricing model, people have to think about their pricing model differently than they would otherwise. When you're doing individual fulfillment, your margins need to recognize that if you're in a market where you feel compelled to offer discounted or free shipping, you've got to build that into your margins. Ultimately, you have to make a living, right? And so you have to figure out how to build that in. But when you start selling in bulk, your margins can actually thin up a little bit, and you can still make the same level of profitability. But you have to manage your shipping correctly in order to do that. And what that generally means is when you move to LTL shipping, which is less than truckload, but pallet and up, it's a fragmented market, and that's a little different than the experience. Most of us have experience shipping parcels, so boxes of things that weigh less than 70 pounds, and you call the normal UPS or USPS or maybe DHL, FedEx, whoever else. And we all understand that model. But when you get into, there's only a handful in each given country of main carriers, and we all focus on those. So there's, in the US, if I asked you to name carriers, you and every other US person on this call would name the top 5 at the same time, and then you drop off into regional carriers, and then you'd kind of all struggle to get to 10. But if you had to name LTL carriers and freight and transportation you can get into the dozens or even hundreds in some cases in countries, because the market is just run differently and you don't have nearly as much consolidation. So it's a much more complex thing to find your partners for the lanes you're going to deliver at. And that's one of the things that's part of our mission is to solve our mission statement. I should probably just give that as a starting point for this conversation, really is wherever you sell, however you ship, exceptionally efficient. And so what that means is we support all lanes, avenues, marketplaces, countries. We're trying to support everything globally. And then the however you ship part is moving in the direction of supporting all the mechanisms and methodologies of shipments. Obviously, we handle parcels deeply, but we're also adding freight and elements to help with the B2B side of the fulfillment. And so the responsibility of our product in that for the customer is to help them not have to become experts in a very deeply fragmented market, so they can just say, I want to move this pallet from this city to that address at that city. And then we just make that happen for them.
Yeah, I think this is a really important thing, which is and for those, so everybody, Transformer Talks, I'm John Kaplan from Alibaba.com, my pal Nathan Jones from Octane and the ShipStation team. Our two companies announced earlier this week the integration of Alibaba.com and ShipStation, which is something we are thrilled about, and is, I think, a big, important step forward for SMBs globally to get the benefit of getting digital and going global, leaving the hard work of software to us so you guys can focus on making great products and selling a lot of them. Our mission is to make it easy to do business anywhere, and our integration is the essence of that, right? You can join Alibaba.com and sell to the world and use ShipStation to easily handle the coordination of your logistics, or you can be a ShipStation customer and now easily integrate back into Alibaba.com so you can reach the world. In your early conversations with your customers, I know you're like me, that you love to talk to small business owners, to hear direct from your merchants how they're feeling. What has been the early reaction from your merchants to joining Alibaba.com and this relationship we're putting in place?
They're very excited, and the reason is because as we already talked about, they recognize the need to expand, and I think we see market pressure, particularly here in the United States. Just speaking from the perspective of our companies, we see this market pressure here from the very large, very successful companies who have a lot of distribution advantages. And one of the ways that you combat that is you go to many markets. You go to markets where you can have different sets of competitors and different opportunities than you have where you're currently selling. It's not always easy to know how to enter those markets easily or quickly or in as frictionless a way as possible. And when we bring on your company into the mix, all of a sudden there's a pathway, right? There's a very, very easy way for people to say, wait a second, all I have to do is this, and I'm connected, and now I can make my products available and I can sell them to anywhere else in the world. Like this is huge for them. And I think that what the feedback we've had so far, we just launched, but the feedback we've had so far, a little bit is like, what took so long from our point of view, right? Like, why didn't we offer this sooner? So we're really excited about it. When we add partners, they usually don't always come with the reputation, and success that Alibaba comes with, right? A lot of times we might actually be the larger partner who's helping people get started and reaching the customers in the first place. But Alibaba comes with success and a positive reputation, and everybody already knows what they're capable of. And so what we've done is help people take something they already knew they wanted or knew that they should be working towards, and just made it that much easier for them to get there. And so we don't have to necessarily teach them who Alibaba is, what they stand for, what their success record is, how globally impactful they are. They already know it. So for us, it's just sort of like found joy. Like you just tell them and they're like, oh, this is great. Thank you. I wanted this. So it's been very well received, and we expect that to continue.
So for folks around the globe who are tuning into Transformer Talks, Nathan's one of those rare CEOs who's actually in the weeds, in the detail, empathetic about his customers, conducting an amazing orchestra. We've had the pleasure of collaborating with the ShipStation team. These are like some of the best humans that I've had the chance to work with. So it's pretty awesome from the Alibaba team. And we share the mission of helping small businesses thrive globally. And so I'm fired up about it. Let's pivot into another area of the discussion. I wanted to get your insight. As a leader of a 500-person company, right? How did your leadership style change when COVID hit, 2020 hit, all of that? What did you do differently as a leader, when March hit?
When I've been a CEO of a startup, like one person, me startup. And then I've had a chance to evolve my skills in that area to the extent I have over, I think now it's been 22 straight years as a CEO of a company, right? And it's been three companies, 22 straight years. And I will tell you that it feels like every 6 months over 22 years, I've been able to declare every other previous version of me to be a complete idiot. And so, and my staff probably agrees with you. And so what we normally get, which is what COVID changed. I know your question was pointed primarily at COVID, but what we normally get is time. we get time to seize. And I have some models that I think you and I might have talked about them briefly, but I have some models I like to think in terms of when it comes to growth of an organization and how it impacts you that I've formed over the years. And I usually write them down and stick in a little book that I have and just kind of refer back to them from time to time. Go, yeah, that's I learned that lesson.
Yep.
One of the models is how fast and quickly people can change and learn and grow. And a lot of times companies grow faster. If they're successful, they can grow faster than the leaders are capable of growing, or than the management of the organization is capable of growing, because we all take time to transform, right? It's appropriate this is a transformer talk because we're all transformed constantly by being in the pressure of these organizations. So it takes a long time to grow and develop and build new policies or build new processes or new ways of thinking or new ways of understanding the people we're working with. And every time I thought I got to a place where, okay, I'm done, and it turned out we got a little bit bigger and I was wrong and had to throw it all out because it was wrong for the size we were. And we can talk if you want to more about what that means and how that might impact your users. But when COVID hit, we had the same change pressure as before, but we didn't have time. And so that's what made this last 6 months or 5 months so particularly difficult, from this kind of organization perspective to do. We're lucky enough to be in a position where our business itself isn't damaged by this. You hate to benefit in a time of strife on other people, right? Like a lot of people are really, really hurt by this. And unfortunately, it's very difficult to help them except through the tools of our industry. And the tools of our industry is, can you transform yourself as a seller and can we help you use our tools to take on new capabilities to succeed where a market has become very toxic and difficult to sell in, which is local retail and walk-in businesses. But the benefit to our business, of course, is that because we're in a position to be able to help, we have had a lot of demand placed on us. And so during COVID, we had a couple of things that hit simultaneously. The same problem that everyone else had, of course, which is we had to manage now, instead of being in the office every day, where we could maintain alignment easily. And that is, by the way, what I've learned over the years, the number one most difficult job of any manager or leader in an organization is maintaining alignment. That's it. There's nothing. I'll get caught in the weeds. You mentioned I was in the weeds a lot, and that's completely true. But a lot of times when I find myself in the weeds, I then retroactively realize I've made a deep mistake, because while I'm in the weeds worrying about a problem that someone else can do as well as I can, I'm not helping keep everyone else in alignment with the people who could be addressing those problems. And that's the number one thing that I would say is a weakness, or my weakness as a CEO is always being able to keep everything in alignment within the organization as it grows at the pace it does. But that's where I'll tell you that COVID hit us the hardest, is because when you send people home and everyone has to work remotely, you now have to maintain alignment. And if you are already a growing organization, you're already struggling against the misalignment that comes from building new layers of management. Because anyone that's in a business that's on this call, that's on a business less than 40 or so people, and I think that other people have some theories on these numbers as to why they are. But if you're 40 or 50 people or less, as a CEO of that organization or a leading manager in that organization, you can still sort of reach the entire organization. You can see everything. You can know everything. When you get to 100, you can't do that anymore. You now have to have other people reach parts that you can't reach. And when you get to 200 and 300, it changes again and again. So each time you think you've settled the part you need to touch and talk to, a new layer has emerged that you're now divorced or separated from that lane that you need to talk to. COVID took what were crutches for us, which is the ability to see you in the hall as I walk by you and go, oh, yeah, that thing. I need to make sure where we're at on that thing. It's taken that off of the table as a tool and a resource. And now we have a very, very different set of mechanisms to interact. And that's what I would tell you was the hardest thing. That happened right when our volume was already growing and we were already having to constantly retool our systems to be capable of keeping up with the volume. And we realized where we had planned for, I'll make a number up, it's not exact, but it's neighborhoody. We might have planned for 25 or 30% growth. And instead you're looking at more than doubling, right? So the volumes that you normally expect to have to cope with at Christmas, right? Where you're telling everyone you can't talk to your children or your wives for this month, your husbands, you got to go home and say goodbye to them all for this month. You're going to do nothing but feed the hamster that keeps the wheels running. We couldn't do that anymore. We can't do that all year long. We can do that for a little bit during Christmas. So we had to step back, and we have an amazing ops team, an amazing engineering team that did an incredible job of retooling our systems. We have 4 products that we are that have active, massive surges in demands with some degree of individual and common infrastructure. And they had to ramp all of that up to keep up with demand that we thought we had 9 more months to get ready for. And we did it without a hitch because I got lucky and had an amazing staff. But luck's not a great strategy for a CEO, but that's the kind of demand that was put on us. So we had to do a lot of things to cope with that. We had to build, and we had, fortunately, because of the nature of our company, we had already had some reasonably strong ability to work remotely built into our DNA, but we had to very quickly become good at it across everyone, including roles that traditionally don't work remotely for us, sales or customer service, people who we expect to sit in a group and share ideas and talk to each other, designers, product leaders. So we had to build all new processes around what that feels like or what that is like to interact, what meetings are like. We had to build new meeting cultures. Yep. One of the things that we do differently, you and I both now on this call, is in a meeting, you often interrupt each other because you have the ability to synchronously talk. And then, and when you're in a room full of people that are web, everyone now has to take their turn, and they say it, or else their voice just gets cut off. So all those habits had to change. So we had to do a lot of things to react to that. So as a CEO, obviously I had to let go of a lot of prohibitions about what it means to not be at work on a daily basis. We had to just entirely throw out cultural expectations about what it looked like. And that was, it was a really interesting process of breaking that down. And, we've had to, for people's health, for example, we've had to institute new notions like, we've always had unlimited vacation. So if you need it, you take it. We would measure your effectiveness by if you're generally getting your job done very well, then you're an effective member of the team. But if you need time off, we don't track it. You just take it, and we'll all know culturally whether or not this person is taking advantage of it or not, and they fit the organization. That has come into play a lot here because there's no line or separation for any of us on this call between work and personal life anymore. When the day is over, my laptop is the same tool. That is my office, and it's with me now everywhere in the house I go. And right. So, I'll sit in front of the TV and I'm still working at 9 at night. Well, my employees are doing the exact same thing. And we've had to start asking, log off, stop doing that, go home, shut the laptop, leave it behind, take days off. We'll occasionally sort of mandate you have to take some days off this month if you haven't taken them off. Otherwise, even if they aren't working more hours, work is infiltrating into more hours. So you might put 8 hours of hard work in a day, but if you spread it over 12 or 24 or 20 hours or 16 hours, however many hours you stay up, you're going to feel like you've been just worked to the bone. And so we've had to really think about what that feels like for the staff.
Yeah, you've mentioned a really broad answer and a few really important points I just want to sort of amplify for the Global Transformer Talks audience here. One is that the relationship we have with colleagues has fundamentally changed because we're in each other's homes on Zoom. I personally find that to be a massive positive because the sort of armor or mask people would wear in the office has come down, and you get to meet people's kids, see their spouses, meet their dogs and cats or what have you. It feels like less artifice and sort of more authenticity. So that feels really good. Another thing you talked about was managers or leaders needing to effectively trust the team more, right? Less micromanaging just by proxy of not being able to lean over the shoulder of someone sitting at their desk working on something. There's more intentional engagement as opposed to spontaneous engagement. And then the other thing that you talked about, which I think is really interesting, is the resilience of the organization to adjust to surges in demand that were unanticipated, right? Like the ShipStation team, your customers, all of them moved all of their business online, which meant, there's been a decade of acceleration in the digital economy in the last 7 months, which meant the volumes of packages being shipped doubled, as you described. And there's nothing like a crisis to uncover your capability. And that's certainly been true here at Alibaba.com. Like we've seen, our team can do even more for our customers than I think we ever even realized, which is so exciting. In fact, this ShipStation Alibaba collaboration was largely born in COVID, right? Like it was, like we pulled this off without ever getting on an airplane, without ever, Alibaba.com and ShipStation working together to help small businesses around the world. And, I've never seen below your shoulders. You've only ever been a Zoom person to me. So it is pretty remarkable how resilient we all are to change, to help people. I think it's super exciting. So let's move to another question that's sort of on our audience's mind as it relates to small business. People are moving digital. That's happening. People are moving to B2B because there's a much bigger opportunity in B2B than B2C. People are moving cross-border to reach markets that they haven't reached before. What's your sense of the next wave after those three? Like when you look out 36 months from now, what should an entrepreneur be thinking about as they continue to evolve and grow their business?
Well, that's a really hard question. That's a long time to look in the future. I'll mostly just echo the trends that I think are going on now and are going to continue to go on in the future. Right? We're increasing towards globalization. We've got to use technology to help us move across borders because no one can individually build that technology anymore. At least no small merchants can. If you get large enough, you can build your own technology. But why would you? You can just buy it. I'll give you an example, by the way, to that point. The price points that technology like ours comes in at is so low that price isn't even a conversation. We're talking about your average seller is going to spend less than $100, less than $50 in many cases to use our platform, even if they have thousands of orders a month, right? If they have tens of thousands of orders a month, they may spend $100 or $150. Right? We're very inexpensive as a solution. So the impetus in the future to have your own technology teams, because by having the reach that we have and partnering with people like you and the reach that you have, if we can take our technology and average its cost across a lot of people, it really becomes how much the merchants can understand the value of the products they're selling in their markets and not how difficult it is to reach those markets. Because we can take the difficulty off their shoulders. And by averaging the cost of solving that problem across hundreds of thousands of sellers, if not more, we can make it an afterthought, the technology. Similar to the way you think about making an international phone call or a long distance phone call or logging into a website from across the globe. What do you care where it's located, right? It's just a transaction. So I think it leaves our merchants free to focus on the value of the products that they have long term. And in what lanes? There's two lanes of e-commerce that I generally differentiate. I'm a reseller, which means I need to aggregate. I have to provide value through the aggregation of different products into one place. So I need to make it easy to solve a problem domain by aggregating the products relevant to that problem domain. Or I'm a manufacturer. I've produced a product that solves a specific problem or a specific set of problems. And people need to recognize that those are the two lanes they can add value. You can do them both simultaneously as well. And that's not, that's a thing of the past that you had to be one or the other. Now we're seeing a big conflation of that where not only do I sell my own hats that I make from scratch, but I also have a line of t-shirts and belts that I supply from somebody else who's doing it. So I can solve your how to get dressed problem, right? All at once in my location. But I'm supplying part of it from scratch. I'm manufacturing it, and the other supply I'm just reselling, or other part I'm just reselling. But putting merchants in a position where they're not they're not having to worry about the operational details that we can solve with technology, that we can leverage collective knowledge as much as any one giant e-commerce behemoth can build their own collective knowledge because they just hire 100,000 people. Instead, we'll just hire the equivalent of 100,000 people for you and spread the cost out over 100,000 businesses.
Exactly.
And that's what I think is the opportunity. When you talk about 3 years from now, I think the opportunity is for the marketplace to really focus on how they can provide products that have differentiated value on other people. Personalization, customization, unique ideas that no one else thought of. I mean, we can all just make the same product again and again, or we can do something truly transformative with our ideas. And that's what I think is where we have a chance to be difference makers long-term, is we can empower ideas, not just reselling of other people's ideas. We can really make it possible for people to do something. So 3 years from now, I think you're going to see more people involved in the unique idea business in e-commerce than you see people in resolving the fact that I don't know about someone else who sells the exact same product because it just happens to be close to my house.
Yeah, pre-pandemic, I had the opportunity to spend some time in Vietnam, meeting with small businesses in Vietnam, and I forgot the name of the entrepreneur who I was talking to, but he was a manufacturer of furniture, I believe, and he was describing how he was selling globally, and he originally was just a domestic seller, and he understood the taste, needs, and preferences of the businesses he did business with in Vietnam. As soon as he expanded his horizons to trade globally, his insight into the innovation just totally changed, right? Because in Great Britain, the business customers wanted something entirely different than in Vietnam versus in Brazil or here in the States. And I think that's the opportunity for small businesses, right? As you go global and participate in cross-border trade, the what you think you know for the territory you've operated in can just expand geometrically, and that is really exciting for the creative juices of entrepreneurs around the globe who are tuning in to Transformer Talks. So Nathan, I know time is short, so last question I like to ask our guests, what book or podcast or sort of what information inspires you, teaches you that you'd like to share with our audience today?
That's a very hard question for me because I consume in a lot of different lanes, and I would start just telling people this, and you got to read this, and you got to read this. There's an endless sea of that. What I would tell you is, if you're not actively consuming podcasts, if you're not actively consuming books, right there, that's where you should start. Right. I listen to a wide cross section of things constantly because say again.
Give us some names.
Okay, so I don't want to stir up controversy. I listen to Joe Rogan because he has every different kind of guest that you can imagine on there. I listen to Tim Ferriss because he's got every different kind of how to solve all the problems in your life going on there. I listen to God, I'm trying to think. I could pull my phone up and just start reading them off. There's no endless sea of them. But in terms of reading, what I will say, I'll have a very specific book. I do think just this borders into the not quite business conversation. But I will say, if those of you who haven't discovered Gladwell's books, Malcolm Gladwell, he's got a series of books that will help you. They're just so easily accessible. There's a lot more complex issues on the same topics you can read about in every case, but he boils them down. If you read Outliers. If you read What the Dog Saw, if you read Blink, and if you read Talking to Strangers, it's a very interesting journey you can go on about helping you think about why you think the things you know and how you think the things you know. Anything that makes you question the way you think, I would advise reading. I think Gladwell's books are a great example for people who are looking for a thing to start with. If they haven't read them, read those because everyone understands them, everyone likes them. But more importantly, everyone has a chance to stop and rethink all the things they've held as sort of sacred thoughts and realize that they always come at them from a point of view. And that's so important as a merchant running a business. If you're not rethinking your premise every day, you're just vulnerable because it's not that your competitor is necessarily better. It's the next competitor that you haven't thought of who's going to come up because they're thinking of it differently. They're not constrained by the lanes that we're already working in. That's the thing I think I would leave everyone with is go pursue those kinds of things to read and listen to.
So we have folks from Haiti, France, Pakistan, around the globe, here in the U.S., tuning into Transformer Talks. It has been a rare pleasure, Nathan, to hear your insights, your perspective. The Alibaba.com ShipStation partnership is live. I'm thrilled about that. Thank you for it. We're going to do great things for the world small businesses together. I hope you have a great afternoon.
John, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for listening.
You bet.